allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Good evening, everybody. We'll make sure your mics are on, board members, so people can hear you loud and clear. We have roll call tonight. Everybody who's present, everybody absent. It's down to approval of the agenda. I do want to add to the agenda tonight, near the end, we do want a closed session on some pending litigation. So we'll stick that down right near the end. Which will be number 12A, I guess we could put on there.
I'll just take the 13.
13. Okay, all those in favor? Any other additions or deletions? All those in favor of accepting the agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so there's our agenda. Presentations tonight. We do have a few guests here tonight. We have our commissioner, Mr. Dan Smith. It's good to have you. I don't know if you have any comments. You're welcome to have a few comments.
Orange and Ford Project, Mr. Supervisor.
Appreciate your service to the community. And it's good to see you here tonight. Okay, public comment. Anybody?
Mr. Supervisor, if it would be acceptable with you and the rest of the board, I would like Commissioner Smith, since we have the privilege of his attendance tonight, to be with us to talk about a couple of county issues, particularly the county road tax and what projects, if any, are queued up for Salem Township next year on that millage.
Mr. Smith?
I don't have the list of projects in front of me for next year. I do know there were several of them that were done in 2015 with that countywide tax, and I don't have the itemized list of the set of projects that we approved for 2016, but the projects that will get done with this levy were all listed out, and we did actually approve all those, and the money can't be spent on anything else. So this isn't just a pot of money that's being turned over to the road commission. Each project throughout the county was explicitly listed, and as they did here in 2015, those will be the only projects done with these funds in 2016. I know that doesn't actually tell you the specifics of what's getting done here in Salem Township. I have to pull it up on my phone, and the internet's slow when I can tell you, but.
My recollection from the map that I saw when that article got published seemed to indicate that North Territorial was going to be targeted again for some chip seal work, and I just wondered if that jives with your recollections.
One of the things the road commission is trying to do with this additional road millage, the Act 283 funds, is to do some preventive maintenance that they haven't been able to do before. So as you're aware, North Territorial has been resurfaced in one way or another from the county line all the way over to M52. A couple of sections were done in Northfield and Webster Township this summer. I know Salem Township assisted with other sections a couple of years ago. And so now what the road commission is doing is coming back and doing preventive maintenance on these very new sections of road, doing a crack seal or a seal coat so that the road continues to stay in good condition, and the little hairline spider cracking that starts to occur after a couple of years as the pavement dries out, they can quickly get on there with a seal coat or a chip seal and then maintain that road for a much longer period of time at much less expense.
One question with the, I guess, Governor signed today the millage for the, I should say, the road funding. Do you foresee this county-wide going on much further? Once this gets implemented and gets going, or
let me back up just a tiny little bit. You may be aware, you might have seen from the Michigan Township Association update that they send out every week, that the Attorney General issued an opinion a few weeks ago stating that the 3 taxes that we've been levying here in Washtenaw County without the vote of the people are unconstitutional. So we've been doing the Act 283, which I mentioned, which is for roads, and then another one's called Act 88, which has been done since 2009, and a veterans relief one using a law from 1899 or something like that. That's also been done since 2009. The Attorney General says all 3 of those are unconstitutional. A week and a half ago, or I guess a week ago, 6 days ago at our board meeting last Wednesday, I brought forward a resolution to put the Act 88 and the veterans relief millages to a vote of the people. I suggested March. We may actually decide on August or November next year, but in any case, put those on the ballot so that everyone in Washtenaw County would have a chance to vote on those 2 millages. I edited my resolution on Wednesday morning to remove the roads millage, and the reason I did that is my feeling is from the conversation that's taken place over years around the board table is that the board doesn't really want to be in the road funding business. And so that's a long explanation to no, we probably are not going to do this in the future, but it does remain to be seen whether we will do the 283 upon the vote of the people and roll the dice with whatever might happen from taxpayer lawsuits or tax tribunal cases or whatever, or take it to the vote of the people or just not do anything. That remains to be seen, but my feeling is that the county board probably will get out of the road funding business and just let Lansing deal with this, or the local municipalities, as I know you've done here in Salem multiple times.
Thank you.
Okay, any other? I think the Curtis Road was the main project that our monies went to.
Yeah, last year.
So, other than that, I know they were chip sealing today, which, from Angle to Pontiac Trail, that was being done today.
The way the 283 funds and the way they're allocated is they're spread out across the county, and there's an attempt to balance what's done by county commissioner districts. So the money raised from the northeast portion of the county is spent in the northeast portion of the county. The money that's raised in the Manchester area, the southwest portion, is spent in that area, and that's a way, an imperfect way, to try and balance things out. Those of us that live here in District 2, the northeast portion of the county, we may drive on roads outside of Salem Township or outside of Northfield Township. North Territorial cuts all the way across the county. So that's how that was balanced out, and so that's why there's not necessarily a whole bunch of projects in any one community. There's some down in Superior and some in Ann Arbor and Township and so on. So,
About how much money was raised totally, maybe from this district?
a total of about $7.5 million across the county. That's $500,000. And from District 2, actually the wealthiest district for the highest taxable value, it was just over $1 million. And that's, as I said, spread out through the entire district, Superior Township, Webster Township, and all the way up to the expressway ring portions of Ann Arbor Township as well. Of the $7.5 million, about $3.5 million goes to the cities, with the lion's share of that in Ann Arbor. So those areas outside of the cities are getting the remainder of those funds, $4 million or so on the county roads. And then the city streets will see about $3.5 million worth of work in 2016.
All right, thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Hey Gary, on the agenda, number 6, it says supervisor's comments, and number 12, it says supervisor's comments. Is there any, what is the reason for needing 2 of them? I mean, do you have that much to
I
say?
might have a comment. Is there something wrong with that?
Oh, I just think it's a little bit ridiculous.
When it comes time, thank you very much.
You know?
Public comments, so why not just supervisor comments?
You got 2 public comments, so there you go. Thank you very much. Thanks, Lonnie. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, also tonight, we have a guest, Matt Higgins. It's Higgins, right? Did I say it? Higgins, lives in Salem Township. He's a school project. He's here tonight, so we'd like to welcome him. And, he seems to be interested in government and stuff like that, so I appreciate you being here tonight. So we like having him tonight. I want to recognize him. Okay, the consent agenda, Mr. Winslow.
I move that Salem Township approve the following consent agenda items. I've got one that's not on here. I have to do an addendum to the September board meeting minutes that refers back to the revote for when we did the new zoning district, private, semi-private, public district. I just need to make a comment there that we re-voted for it in October, in the September board minutes. So I need to make just a quick sentence called an addendum to that September board meeting. So I'll do that. So that's the first thing. Then the minutes of October 13th, 2015, regular meeting of the Board of Trustees. We have the disbursements for October 2015, the general fund, $85,552.04. These would be checks 25,649 through 25,703. Escrow fund disbursements $6,135. Checks 1615 through 1620. We had payroll for October of $53,007.81. Paycor charged us $182.50 to do that. We have disbursements for the sewer fund of $5,830.30, checks 1960 and 1961. And last, we have the invoices for November. General fund invoices $58,785.92. Invoices for the sewer fund of $6,015.59. And lastly, the escrow invoices for $4,195. You have a second on these?
Support.
Okay, any other comments on this? Discussion? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, moving on down to business items under financials. Mr. Winslow.
All right, I move that Salem Township approve the following cost center budget amendments for this fiscal year, 2015-2016. We have the Salem Farms Preserve account. It's 265.951.003. The budget is 0, but we need to revise that to $6,000 to cover the signs that we approved last month, and these will be offset against the rental income revenue account. The next section is the Community Development Department, .372. This is the salary for the Community Development Coordinator. That's Donna Cripps. We have it budgeted for $10,000. The new revised budget is $14,000. She's been, because of all the new building permits, she's been working a lot of extra time, as well as the coordinating payroll taxes for her extra salary there. We have the printing and publishing in the same department, community development. We budgeted $500. The revised budget is $1,500. We had to spend about $1,450 on new building permit signs and stickers and printing for that, so that's all part of that. Next, engineering services, 401.801.042, the Salem sewer study. We we have a budget of 0. We need to revise that to $12,000. And maybe Dale can talk about that later, or, after we get done there. Zoning Board of Appeals, the salaries for the appointed ZBA officials, we have a budget of $1,000. The revised budget is $2,500. We haven't really had very many ZBA meetings in the last couple of years, and this year already we've had a couple, and I think we might need to make 1 or 2 more, but before the end of the year. And lastly, the payroll taxes, corresponding to payroll tax. I do need to add one more that's not on the sheet. My deputy clerk reminded me that we need to add to the Department of Assessing Reappraisal. Last month, we approved $3,900 for the Brayburn Golf Course in our meeting, and we need to put that in the budget. So that will go to 101.209.000.801.101. So that's the assessing.
That's $3,900?
$3,900. So the total for the offsets to contingency fund will be $22,998. We have a second, and then if you have any questions.
I'll support that, Mr. Supervisor. Mr. Wensley, could you repeat the line item for the appraisal under the assessing department?
101.209.000.801.101.
So it's going under professional services?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussions on this? I just want to get under the community development, mostly with Donna, it's more of the zoning and planning.
Yes.
With some of the developments and planning and stuff that she's doing towards that, but not so much the building department, unless you know something I know.
No, I don't.
So that's what that increase is for, and then along with, the signage for the, just to make clear on that, for the farm preserve, there is my thinking right that there's about 18,000 already
Correct.
in that fund?
Yes.
So it's not a separate fund?
Well, yeah, there's the revenue fund that is, has the 18,000, but this is just an accounting budget line item that's in the, called the Salem Farms Preserve account.
But just to make clear that that's coming off of the monies are coming out
Yes.
of the lease that we're getting for farming on the property, and that's where
That's correct.
this
So in
money's
the
coming.
future, if we do any other, building out there, paths or anything like that,
Right.
it'll come out of that 18,000 account.
All right. Any other questions? Discussion? Okay, the motion's been on this table, it's seconded by Mr. Trent. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. All right, moving on down, revenue report's been submitted, treasurer's report, and we're already down to the fire department.
Thank you. Again, we're up on our call runs. As we're moving into the winter months, I expect we'll probably get some bad weather. That's gonna cause some driving problems. You're probably aware we had a fatality on M14. We had a vehicle that crossed the median, hit a car going the opposite direction. Unfortunately, I wanna call him a kid, 22-year-old was dead at the scene. MSP immediately closed down the freeway for 5 hours, which, as I understand from talking to people, took our secondary roads and made them a mess. I tried to get a Nixle alert out to everybody to say, hey, this was going on. Because it was a fatality and they had to investigate it, they needed to shut the freeway, and they shut it down on both ways. So traffic, as you can imagine, was a mess. The only thing we really did have going for us, it was near the overpass, so us with MDOT and the assistance of the sheriff's office were able to route the traffic over the overpass and back down onto the freeway. But as I understand, traffic was backed up past Beck Road coming to the west, and it was back past the Triple Nickels going to eastbound. It makes you think that there'll probably be some reevaluation of having the guide cables in the middle of the road. You'll notice that's in Wayne County, but it's not here in Washtenaw County yet. But here's an example. I believe what I could see was that the car was coming across at probably 70 miles an hour, rolling and tumbling, and was hit by another car going 70 miles the opposite direction. Split the car in half. Thankfully, the mother and daughter in the other car were minor injuries, but I can tell you the impact was so bad that the daughter in the back seat broke her shoulder from just the seatbelt. So watch your traffic, watch your speed, and unfortunately, the weather's gonna get bad, so, when the first snowfall hits, it's crazy. So the other thing that we had a presentation by at the fire chiefs meetings was on chimney fires. We had an expert come in and talk about chimney fires. This is the time of the season when people start to use their chimneys for the first time, and they haven't cleaned them out in a year. And they're really recommending that if you've had a fire, that you really have that looked at by an expert, because that'll crack that lining in there. And the second fire may be much worse than the first fire. So it was very eye-opening. We see it, basically from the fire when we put it out. We're now going to leave some information with our residents that they do have a fire to say, hey, you really want to get this checked out, because the secondary fire that you could have could be much worse. So our response times are still good. We're still under the 6 minutes, which is really good. We've had a lot of runs this year, and we've had a lot of times out in the field. So that's been a big challenge. The other thing is the county is looking at using Blue Card. Blue Card is used in Livingston County for fire response. It's used a little bit in Wayne County, and they're looking at Washtenaw County. And Ann Arbor City has already moved to a Blue Card. It's a standard way of responding to fires and emergencies. The county fire chiefs have funded all the fire chiefs that go through the training, so I will be doing that. That's 50 hours on a computer and 3 days in a classroom. So that'll be funded by the WAMA Association. I don't think there'll be much of a change for us, other than the fact that when we use our neighbors, we'll probably be implementing the system. And the last thing I kind of wanted to talk to, and I was talking to the county commissioner, is next year we'll be looking at a renewal of the millage for the 911, and that was related to the radios. Our 800 megahertz millage is coming up for expiration, and that the fire chiefs, in association with the police chiefs, in association with the dispatchers, will be coming back to the public and saying, we'd like to continue that because it continues to build the infrastructure. It allows us to have radios that now I can talk to the state police, or I can talk to MDOT, or I can talk to the road commission, I can talk to the HVA, we can talk to the sheriff's office. So that interconnectability has been a great improvement from basically, say, 8 years ago, we had the VHF radios which were line of sight. And you're probably aware of it, we're in the northeast corner of the whole county, so we're about as far away as you're gonna get from the dispatching areas with the 800. It's like you're standing right next to it. So more to come on that, but I just thought I'd kind of prelude that. Is there any questions the board has on the fire department? Fire trucks are still slated to come in the middle of December, if I get an update. As I understand, it's fabricated, and now they're working on painting and building the boxes out. So if I get more updates, I'm hoping you see some pictures and stuff, I'll shoot them to the board members. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jim.
Sure.
Putting them out, is that right, Chief?
Yes, sir.
The old vehicles, they're out for bid.
Yes, I believe it's the 20th, Mr. Wensley, that they're gonna, the bids are due in. We've had some people come out and visit them. You're welcome to, we've got keys, you wanna come out and take a look at them, open the doors, stuff like that, kick the tires. There's a number of interests. You've got everything from a mini pumper to a pickup truck out there. And hopefully we can get some good money back into the township and someone can find a nice new home for these guys.
All right, very good. Moving on down, law enforcement report has been submitted, and,
Hey, Gary?
yeah,
On that Washington County law enforcement report, did it say anything about any other robberies, going up, like 5 Mile Road and that? Breaking entries, I'm saying.
yeah, there's been a couple.
That in Brookville, I think.
I didn't see the one.
I seen the one on Brookville.
On
I
Brookville.
got an email from Washington County.
Right.
Which brings up a good point that you can go to the Washington County Sheriff's Office, sign up, and they'll give you alerts to when there's issues like that, to say, hey, neighbors, look out for your area because we've had a break-in or a home invasion, whatever the case may be. So it's kind of nice to say, hey, that's happening, keep an eye out for it.
Yeah, the one on Brookville, they entered a barn and stole small power equipment, tools and whatever.
And the report's done.
It was by, Gofferson, right,
Oh,
on the curve there.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, if anybody's got blue paint on their hand, is that what you're saying? All right, so down to, general township updates. Not a lot of updates other than that we can talk about. As far as, the sewer and water, the USD, we're still, waiting to hear on, you know, Plymouth is the capacity, that Plymouth does have the capacity to service the whole USD. I think the last update we did talk about was that they have a different engineering firm that's looking at it, and we're hoping, and I'm thinking by another month or so, that we will get some real data that will support that they do have the capacity to serve the USD. There's a lot of developers, as we all know, that are looking for that and seeking that, and we've, you know, have made it pretty clear that it's going to be on their dime, that they will be providing that, you know, figuring how to privately fund that. So that's where we're at on it, and I think a lot of people are patiently waiting for that. And you might want to touch a little bit about the lawsuit from the concerned citizens of Salem over that piece of there.
Sure. As I think we discussed in the past, initially Salem Springs brought a lawsuit challenging the referendum election. And that challenge, the referendum election, which had to do with rezoning of the property to general commercial. In the trial court in the Washington Circuit Court, Salem Springs was successful in that litigation. That was appealed by the concerned citizens of Salem to the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals reversed the trial court on the basis that Salem Springs was not the owner of the property at the time they were filing the challenge, and therefore not a citizen of Washington County that could bring a challenge to the election. So the Court of Appeals reversed that decision, basically reinstating the referendum election, which overturned the rezoning of the property. Salem Springs has now filed an appeal to the Michigan Supreme Court of that decision. So this will go on further. Appeals to the Supreme Court generally take at least a year, sometimes longer. So, but it's not an application of right as they had. The Court of Appeals, they could appeal to the Court of Appeals as a matter of right. The Court of Appeals couldn't say no to their case. The Supreme Court can. The Supreme Court only hears cases that they want to hear. And it may be that once they file their initial brief, the Supreme Court may say, you know, this isn't a case that we think is significant to the entire state, so we're not going to even hear it. But we won't know that, you know, no briefs have been filed at this point, so but it'll be a number of months before we know what's going to happen at the Supreme Court.
I think the important thing is that as long as this has been going on, and the residents need to know, the community needs to know, is of the stuff that has been going on, you know, that could possibly go there, as far as the concerned citizens of Salem who really border up against that, of ideas that have been presented to the neighbors, and, you know, so, there's two ways of looking at it. One is, the township could lose, they could have general commercial there and put anything up there. I don't know if any of you ever seen the website that Showstack Brothers has on their website, on that 90-some, I think it's 90-some acres that are on the north side. I mean, that's, again, my personal feeling is, we do not want that in Salem Township. I mean, that's just personally speaking. It's just, it's a ton of box stores, it just is not what, and you could see why the neighbors were just so bent out of shape about that going there, and by giving them general commercial. So this board has, you know, more or less said, you know, whatever ideas come forward that what possibly can go there, you know, we need to look at. And this is to say, is it gonna be something good or bad? But I think all of our concern is what the people who are really surrounded over in that area that are gonna have to deal with that. You know, what are they saying, what are they concerned about? And if you look at the dollar amount of legal fees that them people have paid, is just unbelievable. And I commend them, because they are really concerned about what is gonna go over there. So that's the challenge now, is to figure if there can be some kind of an agreement, or can there, or the worst thing would be is that they win and they get their way with this, so.
The good news is that there have been continuing, ongoing, settlement discussions between the concerned citizens of Salem, which is basically represented by Norm Klein Jr. and Norm Klein Sr. With the Showstack group, there's been a number of, they're trying to find some middle ground that's acceptable to everybody for what can go in there that'll be happy, that will be pleasing to the neighboring adjoining properties, but still will meet the needs of Showstack and whatever development goes in there. So they've been working very, very diligently on that. There've been a number of ideas exchanged back and forth, a number of meetings between those parties, and hopefully, even before the Supreme Court makes a decision, one way or the other, we'll get some agreement between the concerned citizens group and the Showstack group, and we can all sit down and say, okay, now we have an agreement. We don't have to litigate this anymore.
Any other questions, any other updates? What else have we touched on? So I don't know of anything else that we have to talk about, so that's, I did want to make a comment about the park, the preserve, Salem Farm Preserve. We had a donation again from Ford Motor Company. Sue, would you like to comment on that? The volunteers that made the sign? Is Sue back there?
Steve Schaefer, who's a member of our board, had his Ford team come and build the information signs and installed them on maybe 2 signs. And they are installed there, and so we appreciate all of their hard work. They spent the entire day working on it, and they're really a little bit overbuilt. They're built to the specs of Washington County's signs that they have, and they're like 500 pounds a piece. And they didn't build them in place. They built them at another location and moved them. So it wasn't like they built them on site, which they learned wasn't a good idea. We appreciate Steve's efforts in getting that group to really be helpful on the preserve, and we appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. All right, anything else? All All right, so we're down to public comment. Jim?
Yeah, when are you gonna have the grand opening for that park?
What are we thinking, Sue?
Well,
I think the signage is.
well, we're waiting for the official signs to be made, and they were approved last month, and so, Tony Donner is building them now, and he hopes to have them in towards the end of November, which is a lot later than we had earlier anticipated, but government's slow. So it's really up to
And then,
the board as to when they wanna actually open it.
and then the trail, what was the
trail-
update on the trails?
The trails, we went and marked the trails last week with flags. We flagged, because the beans have been taken off, and so we've marked a 12-foot wide path all the way from Brookville across to that road that goes north. And then it goes, back to the parking lot. And so that's really the trail for now. And the trail, and it goes, across the fields, and we marked it that way because even when the beans are in, they keep that pretty much open across the field so that his equipment can get back there, and we thought, well, we'll just do the same path. So I'm hoping we would have it open so that we could use it for winter activities, walking and maybe some cross-country skiing.
Hunting?
No hunting is allowed. We have rules, and we will be posting those rules on those really nice boards that we have out there. And we'd like to have an open house, but it really depends on this board when we want to have it. I think our board would like to get it opened as soon as possible, just so that we can have people on it, and people can enjoy it, but also self-regulate it a little bit, and keeping vehicles off, so we can do the things we need to do to keep it so that people don't use off-road vehicles out there. Because we need to put some fences in, and some small fences and things like that, just to control some of the off-roading. Thank you.
About this wonderful park, did anybody figure out what happened to the buzzards that you guys evicted, the colony of buzzards? And what else did you guys, while you're building this wonderful park, did you guys destroy or evict? Has anybody taken any poll or look into this?
I think that went to Gary's house.
There's
a few buzzards hanging around your house too, O'Neill.
Anything about what species that you're disrupting and taking their place away, just to put in a horse trail or a park for us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, anybody else? Sandy?
I recently attended a meeting with some people from the surrounding communities, and the subject of our newsletter came up, and there was much snickering and laughter. So, can you hear me? You want me to stand up before I stand up? Anyways, so they were laughing about our newsletter. So I took another look at our newsletter, okay, and I'd like to talk about some positives and negatives from the newsletter. So first of all, I FOIA'd how much the cost of the newsletter was, because I think that's a significant thing. We come out with 4 editions each year, and to my surprise, we are paying close to $5,000 in addition of that newsletter. So $20,000 a year, close to $20,000 a year is being spent on that newsletter. So what are the good things or the bad things about the newsletter, or what are some suggestions for the newsletter? Okay, what does that newsletter have? It has lots of color at an additional cost of printing. It has an oversized print font on many of the articles that is not necessary, so it takes up lots of extra space and we have to produce the extra pages. There's wide margins on it, lots of dead space on the pages to make the content appear more substantial. There's recipes in our newsletter. Do I really want to know how to bake or how to make loaded potato salad? Not really. I want information, okay? There's outdated articles or postings from surrounding communities that are appearing, so by the time we get the newsletter, they've already happened. A half a page of that newsletter is devoted to our local church. And I'm not really sure that's even proper for a government-funded newsletter to be listing half a page, the minister and his phone number and everything. And why are we selecting only that? There's other local churches in the area too. We've got oversized pictures and we've got life quote sayings that should not be picking up the space in the newsletter. Now what's missing from the newsletter that may be of value to us as residents, okay? There should be a listing of the meetings, our planning commission, our zoning board of appeals, our land preservation and conservation, the board of trustees, all of these things that are happening for the next 3 months before the next newsletter comes out. If we want people to come to these meetings, let's let them know when the meetings are occurring. Okay, we should have a comprehensive write-up regarding every meeting that has occurred in the previous 3 months since our last newsletter. I would like to know what's happening with the Planning Commission, what they've been discussing. Same thing with the ZBA, same thing with Land Preservation and Conservation. Not everybody comes to these meetings, as we well know. And not everybody is going to be watching a video either. So let's let our residents know. If we're spending 20 grand, let's let them know what's going on here. There has never, in all of the time that this administration has taken over, been a comprehensive financial information from the township treasurer regarding the financial position of our township. There's been nondescript pie charts which are not very clear and there's no explanation and reporting accompanying them. We have a whole page in the last newsletter of events that are happening in other communities. Lots, as I said, some of which have already occurred by the time the newsletter is received. Do I really care what's happening in Brighton and Howell? No, I care what's happening here. I want to know what's happening with the expansion of the landfill. I want to know what's happening with Showstack and that subdivision over there, and how close are we to their time limit that they were given for the sewer and the water. Let's do what's important to this community and forget all of this other periphery. At a cost of $20,000, for the newsletters to be coming out yearly, let's concentrate on things that affect this township and its residents. And I think our newsletter's falling far short of that mark. So let's consider some of these other things.
He's right, Gary.
I totally agree. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
Maybe you should put her on it.
more than happy.
There you go.
And that's the first thing I'd like to say, comment, my comment.
Who does the printing?
If you do want to help on some of that, more than welcome, we invite that.
And they do mailers and everything too?
The mail, the printing, the
And
production.
the other issue
and
that I would
it's
probably
supposed to
take
buy
at
from
is the $20,000. I think we will have the figure for you at the next meeting.
I've got it right here. I FOIA'd it. Would you like me to show? Would you like me to tell you exactly what it is?
The printing of the newsletter, the papers, and then also the first class
Here, so it is.
stamp that
Right. The printing of our last newsletter, Gary, was $33,213.10. The mailing of the last newsletter, the postage was $1,167.61, and I could not be given a figure on what the cost of labor was to actually produce it in the township hall, because I was told they never have figured that out. So I'm being fairly conservative in figuring that it's probably somewhere under $5,000.
Well, again, I'll have that for you for probably the last 4 newsletters. It's not
Okay.
$20,000. Okay, any others? Joanne?
At last month's board meeting, Trustee Daniels wanted to spend over $30,000 on remodeling the Mueller House. I made the comment at the time, being the chair of the maintenance committee, that refurbished the entire Ryder House, that you should get your ducks in a row, get your things together, figure out what it is you wanted to do and what you needed, and then go from there. Well, it seems that hasn't happened. In last Thursday's South Lyon Herald, there was a notice of bids being accepted for the remodeling of the Mueller House. As the chair of the maintenance committee that completely refurbished the Ryder House, here are my issues with this notice and the remodeling. No bid specs for this project. You want a bid on windows. What kind of windows? Wood, vinyl, fiberglass, double hung, sliders? You want a bid for a generator. Is that a 15K, 20K, or do you want a bigger one? You want a bid for a new furnace. Again, what size? What energy rating? You want a new side porch. What kind? How big? Wood, plastic decking, cement? Nowhere does it state that the side porch must be ADA compliant. You want the exterior painted. Has the exterior paint on the Mueller house been tested for lead paint? The house is old enough to have an original layer of lead paint. Lead paint mitigation is costly. We had to do it on the Ryder House, and only a few contractors will do it. Failure to be sure of this fact can cost this township several $1,000s, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending, in fines by the MDEQ. You asked for bids for widening the driveway and final landscaping. Until you know the dimensions of the new side porch and rebuilding the front porch, you'll have to adjust your quote no matter what. Also, are you going to tear out the old driveway and put in a new and pave the entire thing with asphalt or cement, or just widen it with a strip of gravel? Since it will be for the public use, will we use commercial driveway specs for that project? What about ADA compliance in the bathroom of the house? This will be a government building, and it must comply with all access and safety standards. Complying with the ADA standards in a bathroom will be costly. No one will be allowed to use the facility until it complies with the law, regardless of whether they are disabled or not. With no bid specifications, cost overruns are a certainty. You won't be able to compare bids because you won't be comparing the same things, since the people doing the bids have no specs to follow. Since this work is being done on the premise that the state police will move there from the Ryder House, does this board have something in writing that says they will? Or is this another good old boy handshake thing that may cost this township tens of thousands of dollars, if not more, for no reason? Trustee Daniels, have you or Supervisor Whitaker sat down with the state police to find out what they require in the building? They have a huge gun safe. You have to make sure the floor over there can support it. It wasn't built for that. The Ryder House had to have special structural fittings for that. We had to retrofit the structure. Without knowing the entire scope of work and remodeling needed, how can you begin to know the budget? The entire project lacks any real effort or planning. It's a knee-jerk, let's spend some money reaction to wanting, not needing, more office space. Supervisor Whitaker, you stated that at the last board meeting you don't have an office. Well, my question to you is, why do you need one? You spend 4 months of the year working on your farm, and then 4 months a year in Florida. I don't believe spending this kind of money so you can have an office to use for 4 months is a justifiable township expense.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah. Gary, what's going on with that Cagle down the road? With the cement down here?
He has a business down there.
I mean, has he got all the permits he needs down
As
there?
far as I know, that company was in before we came in office.
When did they start doing what they're doing now? That wasn't done before. I think somebody should, instead of letting it slide, I think somebody should go down there and check that out to make sure.
We have.
Who has been?
I have been.
Okay, and I figures. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah, in the fall newsletter, there was a section that you wrote about the landfill, the expansion, and the fact that it was presented at the July meeting. I haven't attended August, September, October, so I'm wondering if you could provide an update, or as part of the committee that was formed by the board on that landfill expansion, if you could provide an update on where that stands, and
Sure.
do we still own the 80 acres that's part of the expansion?
Right. There was a committee formed from the board and the planning commissioner. So they have, we have not met. The advanced disposal group people have said that they would get with us and meet with us when they first wanted to sit down and talk about the expansion. So none of that, we've been waiting for them to come in and sit down and talk with us. So nothing has been done as far as any negotiations or talking or exactly what, to sit down and have the committee meet for the first time. That has not been done yet. But they did say that they would, get with us. Now, one thing that I am personally on is the Washtenaw County Waste Management, which is in Washtenaw County, talking about waste for the whole Washtenaw County. And that's all kinds of recycling and stuff like that. I've been at 2 of the meetings, and but they've had some tours of the landfill here, and then some other recycling centers in Ann Arbor. But at this time, we just know that they have interest in expanding, and we need to sit down and figure out exactly what they want to do, and then what the township stand is going to be on this. And then as soon as that happens, the public needs to be aware of what they're talking about doing. Of course, they have talked about the 80 acres that we own to be part of that landfill use. But again, that's just all stuff that they have just thrown out, but there has been no actual meetings.
Do they already own the balance of the 240 acres? Who owns the balance of that?
Where they had proposed is more or less the north side, kind of like where the compost is. They've have talked to us about the maintenance building and that kind of stuff being moved over across the street, which they're continuing. The 2 cells are working on the 1 cell now, and then the other cell, which is on the south side, the eastern part of it. So there's 2 cells there that they're filling in now, which they're saying another 15, 16 years of that. But just across the street where the compost pile is, and then the 80 acres, which would be where they took the whole house down. They were looking at that. That's what they're going to come and talk to us about.
As landfill property, though, not as, property to be filled with garbage,
Right,
basically.
right.
Not as public utility building kind of space. It would actually be filled.
Right, right. They're looking at that. A lot can go on in the negotiations. It could be just, their expansion can maybe just be where they're doing the composting and that's it.
But that didn't answer my question.
Okay.
The newsletter says that they're looking at a possible expansion of 240 acres, of which 80 belongs to the township. So my question was, do they currently own the balance of that?
Yeah, the balance of the 240, I believe, is the whole landfill put together. I don't believe it's 240, just the spot that they're looking at, that expanding on the north side. They did purchase some more land, and I don't know exactly how many acres that is, further north.
How can we find out?
Yeah, but that's not where they're talking about filling. They're talking about where the compost pile is, and then considering going west, that the township owns is the 80 or 88 acres it is.
On the north side of 6
On the north side of 6 Mile.
In the newsletter, you mentioned that it's an additional 240 acres, so that would be.
We live off of
Yeah.
7 Mile.
Right.
I can smell the dump on warm days. And I am concerned that you are getting really close to my property, so I want to know some answers, and where do I get that information
Right,
if
well,
you don't
like I
have
said,
it?
we need to, they need to come to us and present their plan, what we're talking about. They did come in at one of our meetings and talk about, just kind of what we're talking about on the north side. You know, we need, again, once we still get us through public hearings and our meetings and keeping people updated as soon as they come to us and present their plan to us. But that's what we're waiting for.
Do you have any representation from Washtenaw County? I don't know if Mr. Smith would comment or know anything about it, but I know they're figuring out some long-term solid waste plan in Washtenaw County, and this is the only landfill in the entire county.
Yes.
So, it just seems like the writing's on the wall.
Right.
That there's gonna be this flood, and you have to put up your wall to block the flood. Unless we want more dumps in our area. So,
Well, you know, the main thing that we're gonna have to consider as a township as a whole is, you know, how much do, if at all, extend this landfill or call it quits.
right,
You know, and that's why we have a person who is, that lives right on Chubb Road, that's part of the committee, people that live right close to it too, to have their input, to see if this is something, is the township gonna be big enough to levy a tax to provide the services that the township currently has? Or do we, say enough's enough? I mean, cause I'm getting, you know, I get some emails from people that say, you know, it is enough. And, we don't wanna expand, so, but there's others that, you know, say, well, you know, we've had this for so long as it's really not infringing on some of the people that are right up against it, you know. These are the things that we really need to hear from the people and concerned about how far do we want this to go?
Can we be on the mailing list to be informed as to when these meetings will be occurring?
Absolutely.
That's what should be in
but
the
the
newsletter.
commission has
That
not
should be in the
met yet,
No,
or the committee, I mean?
no, not yet. And we are waiting for them. There's,
Waiting's not a good practice.
well, no, I mean, they have to come in and, you know, they have to have a host agreement for us to,
They've already expressed their interest of what they want.
Expansion,
Right.
yeah.
Well, and somebody has already made them aware that there's 80 acres that the township owns that might be available to them. So it seems to
well, we
me there
don't
has
own
been
it,
some kind
we
of
don't actually own
conversation.
it. It's given to us when the landfill closes. That was part of the deal on the last expansion.
We did it through the township.
So it's their property, but it's, the deal that was made then to have the 2 cells, that they're currently filling now, you know, when it's done, then it's, you know, it's given to us. But, that's the agreement that the past, administration made with them.
Whose name is it in right now?
It's in theirs,
The 80 acres?
correct.
Oh, it's been there.
Okay. They own it all.
And
Gary, it's my understanding, maybe I'm wrong, correct me if I am, that the property that they're looking at on the north side, they haven't even determined yet that that's even feasible for landfill. I mean, they've got to go through some due diligence on sinking some wells and things like that to make sure that it's even feasible. So they're not even at that stage.
Sandy?
That's true that they're not at that stage. Stantec has been over there doing some testing, I know, because I've been over at the compost area a few times. My question is I know when he was in here a few months back, did he give you any kind of idea about a timetable at all? Because he didn't mention it at the meeting. I mean, are we talking 2 years? Are we talking 6 months? Are we talking 10 years? I mean, because I'll tell you, some of us attended meetings a while ago and were here when they came to us the last time for the expansion of the landfill. And we were told at that time that there would be no more expansion, that was it.
Yeah.
When that additional foot, whatever it was added to the landfill, that was it. So I think there's some double talking going on here, but I really would like to know, did they give you any kind of a timetable? Are we thinking in terms of the township's gonna have to address this in 6 months, or is it a long way
Yeah,
off, or what?
We thought, at least I did, I think we thought that they would be in this summer talking about it, because that's kind of what they indicated. I have seen Dave Rattel at Washtenaw County, some of the meetings there, and he just said they haven't got, you know, the information to come to have their first meeting with the committee. You know, and again, I know the county has to make a decision on this, or, you know, what they're gonna do with the waste in the future, you know, 40 years from now, or whatever. But we know, or what they're saying is that their lifetime of what they have now is still another 16 years or so.
So what he is indicating to you is that if nothing changes today, they would have approximately another 16 years for use of that landfill before it was at its end, let's put it that way. Okay. That's useful information, no?
What does that include, the 80
Lynn.
acres that they?
If the township's piece of property that they'll ultimately own is not part of a future landfill, would that change their plans? Because I've not heard discussed in this room whether the township is willing or not willing to allow its 80 acres to be part of an expansion. And I would think that we need to have that discussion before they come in with any plans.
Agreed.
Because that may be a way to block it.
My question is,
Interrupt, let 'em have it.
they wanna move north, why couldn't they just go south a little ways?
Oh, that's okay.
Has there been a study if they could expand it a little bit south
I
towards
live there.
Lima?
They can't go south because that's where their recycling area is. They actually have that. And the railroad. Is that what you're talking about? So they couldn't go that way without interfering with the railroad, and that's where all that recycling area is, even further south from that.
Yeah, Chip, Center down. Johnson Creek Center.
Johnson Creek doesn't,
They got one more.
it goes behind me and then.
Yeah, they,
over.
on the south side, you've got the MRF, which is their recovery.
Right.
And then you also have the gas recovery out of the landfill, so you have a power plant there too.
Correct. So
There
there's
is
not.
some restrictions there. Not to say they
Johnson
could be
Creek
overcome.
doesn't interfere with the landfill at all.
Didn't at one time, wasn't that landfill supposed to go back to the township when they were done there, the whole landfill?
Right. When it's
Is that
finally
still,
closed.
is that still in the deal?
Ski lodge.
Ski lodge, right?
That's what I understand.
They've done that before.
Ski lodge.
They have been, you know, that one, that ski.
All right, anything else?
Golf course, ski hill.
Those were hell of a plan.
It's a good plan.
All right, it's good discussion tonight. And, no matter what anybody says, I still need an office, so,
Are you
no
talking?
matter how many months you
supervisors
think
comment
I'm
now?
here or not here, but I could use an office, especially when people come in, to have discussions and stuff that's coming in. So, whether you believe it or not, I do, so. All right, we're down to, motion on closed session. Mr. Trent.
Mr. Supervisor, our attorney has asked that we go into closed session so he can update us on pending litigation. I move that the Salem Township Board of Trustees go into closed session pursuant to MCL 15.2688E to discuss pending litigation on the following legal matters with Township Attorney Ed Plato, Salem Springs LLC versus Salem Township, Joe Yoggio versus Salem Township, and Edwin Signer versus Salem Township.
Second?
All right, any discussion? Take a roll call?
Converse?
Yes.
Daniels?
Yes.
DeLuca?
Yes.
McLaughlin?
Yes.
Trent?
Yes.
Wensley, yes. And Whitaker?
Yes.